Yeah. And we're live. Hey, everybody. I'm going to not talk because I am not the moderator. But if you can hear us, please type yes in the event chat or in the stage chat, and we will get going. But I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful moderator, Irene.
Well, hello, happy Black History Month, and welcome everybody to this session. We're going to be exploring the concept of Black identity in Canada. So let's get started introducing our panelists. Dwania Peele is the owner and executive director of Canadian Small Business Women, a lover of entrepreneurship, volunteering, and networking. Dwania strives to inspire aspiring and current entrepreneurs in Canada. A chemist and political scientist by training and education, but an entrepreneur at heart, Dwania has started 2 successful businesses since 2008. In Canada, in 2013, Canadian Small Business Women began serving as a platform for aspiring and current small business women of Canada through e-courses, blogs, online chats, seminars, and expos. CSBW provides avenues for entrepreneurs to showcase their expertise. And she is also an author with recent books, The Power Within, Inspiring Stories of Female Immigrant Entrepreneurs, and Voices of Strength, Inspiring Stories of Female Entrepreneurs. So welcome, Dwania. And let's be honest, thanks for putting this whole wonderful summit together.
Thank you.
Of course. We also have with us Novelette E. Gordon. She's an alumna of the University of Windsor, Bachelor of Arts 2006 and Bachelor of Education 2012. Over the past few years, she's taught overseas in England and China, educating the next generation. Novelette acquired her Master of Education from the University of Ottawa in 2019 with a concentration in teaching and learning, focusing on strategies for engaging students. She enjoys volunteering. She's a para-athlete coach for athletics, an avid Tennis Canada volunteer. She's recently been planting Toastmasters clubs around the world. And she also serves on the Black Justice Committee. Together We Rise for the Hamilton Community Legal Clinic. And she's a member of the Windsor Sports Hall of Fame Committee. Never one to be idle. She's also a filmmaker. And we're so happy to have you here, Novelette. We also have AJ Grant Nicholson, who is a lawyer with extensive experience in mental health related law, including mental capacity litigation, substitute decision making, and mental health related criminal law. And he's a policy advisor and consultant with experience developing large-scale justice programming for marginalized persons. Prior to founding Grant Nicholson Law, a private law practice and consultancy, he led mental health strategy at Legal Aid Ontario. He received a Bachelor of Science with honors from the University of Toronto and his Juris Doctor from the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law. He's a board member of the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment and a member of the Mental Health Commission of Canada's Executive Advisory Committee for Mental Health and Justice. He often works with stakeholders in the justice and health sectors to improve access to legal services for persons with mental health and addiction needs across Ontario. Welcome, AJ. And we are looking forward to being joined as well by Neveen Dominic. We'll introduce her later. So welcome, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just checking. Okay. So first of all, we're approaching 1 year of pandemic life. I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Irene Moore-Davis, and I'll be your host today. I have a lot of hats too, but I'm president of the Essex County Black Historical Research Society, and I also am a manager at St. Clair College, where I teach English, underground railroad history, and Black cultural studies courses. And I'm also co-founder of Black Women of Forward Action and a bunch of other things. So happy to be here today as well. So first of all, we're approaching 1 year of pandemic life. How's everybody doing? Like, what are you finding to be your most helpful strategies for coping with this situation, this new normal?
I know for me, I go based on goals. So I just tell myself 2022, it's okay, just 2022. And I just keep pushing, because if I make the little goal of maybe next month I'll be free, I can't handle the disappointment. So 2022.
That works. Does anybody else want to jump in?
Funny. I'm not too bad. I was fortunate in that a year ago, when the pre-pandemic, I had decided to take some time off from work, and I had just finished my master's. So for me, it's been a delayed year. I'm just now actually feeling the pandemic. So I'm glad that it's just happening for me now when it's hopefully ended. So hopefully it's not too much longer. Thank you.
Okay. I'm so glad to hear that you're holding up well. So back in December 1995, on the basis of a motion introduced by the Honorable and amazing Jean Augustine, the House of Commons officially recognized Black History Month in Canada to be celebrated every February. So we've now been celebrating Black History Month in Canada officially for 25 years. What does Black History Month mean to you? Does anybody want to jump in and answer that?
I'll jump in and answer that. When I think about Black History Month, it's really important to remember the context in terms of Canadian history. Quite often when I talk to people who are not Black and they try to make small talk with me, they'll say something like, where are you from originally? The assumption being that because I'm Black, I must be from somewhere else. And I always get annoyed with that assumption because it's ignorant to the fact that Black people have been in Canada since the inception, even before the inception of Canada. Canada with its history of colonialism, slavery. When you think about the Black loyalists who fought for the British Crown and settled in Canada and Nova Scotia in the 1700s. When we think about important Canadian statesmen and women like Jean Augustine and Lincoln Alexander, we've been here for a long time and have been contributing the actual fabric of the society in very important ways. So, I do bristle when people ask that question because, a part of being Canadian is the Black experience identity.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer.
And so, sorry, to bring it back to your point about Black History Month, I think Black History Month, just to kind of, bookend that, is just a commemoration of that, to acknowledge that fact and to also enlighten others about our contributions to this country.
Very good. Does anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll say I would agree with AJ in that I think it's important for us to know that, Black people have been around in Canada for centuries. And for me, seeing that it started in 1995, and I was fairly a new immigrant, as you say, in Canada at the time. My family immigrated to Canada in 92. So it started 3 years after I came to Canada. And when I think back about my childhood, when I came to Canada and where it is now, it's always been about multiculturalism. And from my perspective, Canada's always been like this multicultural melting pot of people and individuals from all over the world from my childhood until now. And I think we're just now embracing that multiculturalism from my perspective. So for me, that's what Black History Month has come to mean, is that it's just recognizing everybody that's here, that's made this country what it is, and knowing that many of us have been around for a very long time and we need to see each other.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to jump in myself a bit. I mean, as a 6th generation African Canadian, I get asked all the time where I'm from too, and it's hilarious. I think that Black History Month is a great opportunity to shine a light on all of our contributions, the struggles, yes, but mainly the stories of overcoming and resistance, and to seek inspiration that we can share with everyone around us. And I'm always so happy when this month comes around, although I do believe that Black history should be celebrated every month of the year. But I'm glad we get to shine a special light every February. So moving on to the next question, Ronaldo Walcott, great scholar, has observed that Black Canada is not one thing, it's multiple moments of Blackness, it's multiple relations to the nation's space, it's multiple points of arrival, it's a set of different histories. So this afternoon, I'm very interested in hearing your stories. When other Canadians ask you about your ethnocultural identity, how do you typically respond?
I'll jump in on this one. I always say I'm Jamaican, but that is because I was born and raised in Jamaica.
Mhm.
But, this takes me back to when I actually just moved to Canada, and I would ask people where they're from, and I would get, their ancestry as the answer. So I never really understood that. I still don't understand it. I'm going to be honest. It's a question that's always baffles me, because I have to go, if I'm saying where you're from and you're born in Canada, I expect you to say Canada. But a lot of times the answer is your ancestry. And I found out from, just speaking to a few colleagues, that this is kind of ingrained from the school system, because they teach you to embrace your heritage as opposed to embrace being Canadian. And I can see that being a problem for Black Canadians, because you have a stake in this country. And to say you're Canadian means that this country is yours as well. And, I wish there was more of that, but that's just me personally. I haven't gotten to the point of saying I'm Canadian, because in my head, or I identify as a Jamaican woman who lives in Canada.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to jump in on that question? The question was, when other Canadians ask you about your ethnocultural identity, how do you typically respond?
I mean, it kind of dovetails well with my last point about, where am I from and the assumptions behind it. I can think of one awkward conversation when I was in a bar in Hamilton, and the guy came up to me and he asked that question and emphasized, where are you from originally? And, I knew what was behind that. So I said, I'm from Toronto. And, he was really adamant to get that answer from me. So he's like, no, but where are you really from? And then, I kind of pushed back and I said, well, I'm really from Jane and Finch, a part of North York, if you must know. I'm proud of the fact that my immigrants, West Indian immigrants from Jamaica, both of them. And I think about my grandmother, Beverly Folks, who was a social justice activist and a community leader in the Toronto area and in the Jane and Finch area, the executive director of Black Inmates and Friends Assembly. She's done a lot of work in the community. And when I think about my grandmother, she doesn't she wouldn't necessarily say that she's Jamaican or Canadian. I think she'd have a focus on community. And that's what she really cared about, contributing to this community, even though she was an immigrant and a recent immigrant at one point. I just feel like, our contributions in terms of being at the forefront for fighting for rights of marginalized people as recent immigrants in terms of our community, like my grandmother. I mean, we've contributed a lot to this place that we call Canada. So I like to think about that whenever I'm asked that question and think about my identity. I guess I think about, our community per se here and what we've contributed.
Excellent. Thank you. So what is your earliest memory of having realized that you were, in fact, a Black person and different from others? When did you recognize that you were different from some of the other Canadians around you?
I can jump in. My first memory, I wasn't even in Canada. I was in the US, because I lived in the US before I moved to Canada. And I remember I was almost 11. And I had to learn quickly. My parents had to tell me, like, look, this is how the world is, because I was just starting a new school. It was a pretty multicultural school, and they did not want to put me in the grade I was supposed to be in. And then they put me in the slowest of classes, held me back. And I'm like, as a kid, you don't understand. So I'm like crying, like, but I already did this grade. Why do I have to do it again? And they didn't seem to care. And my parents just had to look at me and say, this is how the world works as for a Black person. No one is handing you anything. You have to work 10 times as hard to get half as much. And that's just that. But that was my aha moment. Like, okay, girl, now you pay attention. Open your eyes.
Wow, Dwania, I must say, I wish I had that experience when at a young age. I would say growing up for me, it was great. Like, I honestly had an amazing childhood in Jamaica. And then when we moved to Canada, I was always surrounded for some reason by just a mixture of people. The neighborhood that we moved to when we moved to Canada was very multicultural. We had Black, we had African, we had European, we had Muslims individuals. I had a very multicultural group of friends. And for me, I never really got that until probably high school. And in my senior years, I think it was either grade 10, 11, we actually had something at my high school called Slave Day. And it was where, it was supposed to be for charity, where they had these different events, but people could buy people and they would be their slave for the day. And for me, there's not any one definitive thing that sticks out in my mind about high school specifically, about Black history or about being different, other than this particular event. And that's still something that I can categorically say, when that happened, I was like, what is this? We had learned a little bit about Black history, in history class, and a little bit minute thing about the ships and coming over in the Middle Passage. So I had gotten that knowledge. And then when we had this event, I was like, there is something wrong with this. We should not be allowed to just buy people. It seems wrong. And so that's for me when the idea of like my culture, my history of learning about slavery and kind of what the process really meant. And I was somewhat disappointed that my school even allowed this to take place. But looking back now, I think if they didn't know, like if the powers that be that were in charge at the time weren't knowledgeable enough to tell us that this was wrong, like the ignorance that, for me, thinking back, it was so ignorant to allow kids to do that. And I know now that ignorance should no longer be an excuse for us to allow things like that to continue to happen in our society. So for me, that's when I kind of found, I experienced a little bit of difference between what was allowed to happen and what was accepted in our society as the norm. And I hope that I would never perpetuate that in my classrooms or just in my life.
I think for me, being born in Toronto and born in Canada, I was very lucky because I was born in a household where from day one, Black is beautiful, and be very proud of my background. So I'm very fortunate about that. I remember even toys I get. I mean, I couldn't just get He-Man. I think the Black version of He-Man. So I was very lucky to be born into a household where Blackness was celebrated, and I was always taught about why it's so important to assert who we are and be proud of who we are, and kind of guard ourselves against a world that might be hostile to us. So it's unfortunate, but I do feel very lucky that I had that ingrained at a very early age.
And my experience was very much the same, I would say. I was raised to be very, very proud of our family's heritage, of our Underground Railroad heritage, of my father's Caribbean heritage too. And was certainly taught that our ancestors had a hard time and that we could overcome as well. So I knew that there were things that had to be overcome. But I remember it was around early grade school that I started to notice the differences in treatment among kids. And one of the things was sort of who got invited to the birthday parties and who didn't, and things of that nature. So I was very grateful to have a wonderful, supportive family. And I'm even more grateful now that I had such great role models to help overcome those challenges. So let's move on to the next question. I certainly wonder about the role of all of your families in supporting you as you contended with that realization of being other in Canada. We've heard from Dwania and we've heard from AJ. Novelette, is there anything that you'd like to share, something you can recall your family or other adult role models doing or saying to help you through those challenges and those experiences?
I would say more things that happened later on in my life. As I said, I think I'm one of the, I guess, to say the lucky ones in growing up. As I said, I had a very multicultural upbringing and community. My family was always supportive in having different types of friends. My house was the house that kids came over all the time. My mom would be like, who is that kid? I'm like, oh, he's so-and-so or she's so-and-so. And everybody was always welcome in my house, and even myself in my friend's house, actually. It really was, I would say, I really had a great childhood, and I'm very fortunate and happy that I can say that happened for me. growing up, going to university for me was maybe where I was maybe dropped in more of a reality of this is the Black world and this is the white world. I was kind of taken out of my comfort zone in my family, my community. I'm from Hamilton, so I moved to Windsor. And as we know, Windsor is extremely multicultural. And I thought I knew multiculturalism until I went to Windsor and really saw and experienced just literally a plethora of people and culture and even food. And I'm Jamaican, so we know food, but even seeing different types of African food and got to experience that even more. So my family has always been very supportive. And again, it was a matter of just being able to go to any and everybody in any walks of life. We've had it all in my family, people who were just stay-at-home moms, or there were people who were entrepreneurs, they owned their own business, teachers, nurses. We're just now getting some doctors. We've always had business people in my family. So I could go to anyone for some kind of support. And there was always that encouragement to always reach higher. As I said, I think Dwania's point, I wish they had maybe told me at a younger age that even if you're reaching higher, there's going to be something there that you don't see that may restrict that. And that's something I did not get growing up, which I wish I had a little bit, say that you're going to have to work a little bit harder, even though you're good at what you do. You will have to work a little bit harder. And this is why I didn't get that lesson until I went to university. And I thought, well, I have the grades. I'm working, I'm an athlete, I'm doing everything I should do. Why aren't these things happening and falling into place the way that I was told they should? So I got that experience and I was able to kind of work through it with great support at the University of Windsor and, professors, coaches and things like that. But I always fell back on the support from my family. The foundation that was built for me in Jamaica, even now I say, that's the most important thing I can go back to. If I fall, I know that when I get up, that strong foundation is there regardless. No matter what happens in Canada, I go back to that foundation that was built by my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles. And I know that foundation is strong and there's nothing that can stop me from getting up because I know that foundation is there. So that's for me what continues to make me strive.
Excellent. I can really relate to that too, myself. Again, growing up, we spent so much time looking at old family photos and being told the stories. And I was at a very, very young age when I knew that my great, 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 great aunt, Marianne Shad Carey, had risked everything and braved everything to become the first Black woman newspaper publisher in North America and the first woman to publish a newspaper in Canada. I knew that my great, great, great uncle, James Dunn, had sued the Board of Education of Windsor in 1883 over their segregationist practices and then became elected a school board trustee to overcome segregation here. I knew that my great, great grandfather had run for mayor in 1896 here in Windsor. I knew that our ancestors braved everything and risked everything to make these unbelievable journeys to Canada to seek freedom and keep their families intact. So I was really, really grateful for those stories. And I'm still very grateful for those stories. And they definitely conveyed to me that I could do anything too. And, I wish that every kid got to hear stories like that. It would do them so much good for sure, because we all come from amazing people. So this panel, myself included, represents a broad cross-section of Black Canadian identities. What makes you proudest about your identity or your heritage in particular?
Right. I just want you to understand you have two Jamaicans on here. And in Jamaica,
you don't want us to get going, I think. Right?
Us. We're just proud, period. I can't pinpoint one thing.
You can't tell us nothing. No.
Well, if you could name one thing, I know it's hard, but if you could name one thing, if you were talking to a younger version of yourself, or if you were talking to a younger family member, what would you say to them about the thing that they should be proudest of regarding your heritage or your identity?
I would say our impact.
Okay.
I feel like we have an impact in every other country on the globe. Because you think you can say jerk chicken, everybody knows what it is. You can say Bob Marley, everybody knows what it is. You could go like this and everybody be like, oh, that's Usain Bolt. You know, like we have that impact. So yeah, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I think the one word I would use is pride. Just have pride in who you are, love who you are, where you come from, no matter what. Be prideful, because as Dwania says, everybody wants some part of any Black culture around the world. Believe me, I've seen it, I've experienced it. They want my hair, they want to touch my hair, and just be prideful. And I think that's something that we need to just continue to promote in our culture, in our world, just for everyone. Be proud of who you are and be respectful of everyone's culture, of everyone's ethnicity, sexuality, anything. But be proud of who you are.
Yeah, I mean, just to underscore Dwania's point about impact, and I'm going to, just maybe look at it more from a Black Canadian lens. You think about excellence that we've done in spite of all the adversity, that I think that's so remarkable that in spite of adversity, two of the world's biggest musical stars are Black Canadians, whether it's The Weeknd from Scarborough or Drake from Toronto, right? That's huge. If you think about Olympic athletes, Donovan Bailey, I won't say Ben Johnson for obvious reasons, but he won gold medal at one point. Jerome McGinley, so I can talk about sports. I can talk about philanthropy, right? When I talk about Michael Lee Chin, who's a Jamaican Canadian, right? Billionaire. So in spite of all these challenges, we still have made such an impact here in Canada and across the world. I think about Malcolm Gladwell, who's a writer who I think is part Canadian at least. And, he has this idea of David and Goliath, and adversity actually kind of can make you a better person. Some of the greatest people, accomplish the most because of adversity. And so, I'm not happy about the fact that we have adversity, but I'm very proud of the fact that we've made such a big impact here in Canada and across the world, despite it.
Yeah. As a literary person, I have to lift up the names of, you mentioned Malcolm Gladwell, but Lawrence Hill and Afua Cooper and all of these incredible writers that we have in this country. George Eliot Clark, my goodness, we're so fortunate. But not only are we fortunate, but we are accomplished and resilient. And we all have this DNA in us for greatness and for excellence. And the goal then is to figure out how to realize that and how to open up that capacity in everyone. So thank you. I really appreciate those comments and those answers. So all of you have attained success as entrepreneurs through the years. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the most pressing needs in terms of strengthening opportunities and the entrepreneurship ecosystem for Black business owners and entrepreneurs in Canada. What are your thoughts?
I started my down like during the pandemic. I know we talked earlier about ways that you can, what did we do during lockdown? Well, I started a business. It was very difficult, but I think it was a positive way to use, my time and to focus. And one of the things I can say that's lacking, and there seems to be some kind of shift, is the need for more directed financing for Black businesses, right? So the Trudeau government, I give them a lot of credit, acknowledged this, especially in the wake of the George Floyd murder and the BLM movement. I think that helped kind of push this issue to the forefront. But speaking as a Black, business owner, I need to see that more on the ground. I need to see this in our banks. Our banks are very conservative, and I think that's an understatement in terms of lending practices. I think there needs to be more acknowledgement about historical, inequities, whether it be because Canadian policies in the past or, even just barriers in terms of bias in banking right now. I mean, these things need to be addressed, and I think there needs to be more support financially of Black entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Anybody else want to comment on that question?
We just had this conversation in our last session, and definitely financing was it always is a huge question mark for Black entrepreneurs. And I want to piggyback what AJ said. There is one bank that is about to launch something for Black entrepreneurs. I believe it's CIBC. They just sent out a memo that I guess they've partnered with the government, and there's something in the works. But yes, we do need to see things on a level that the entrepreneurs who actually need it can grasp it. But I feel the issue that the federal government has right now is that they are trying to find the right way to funnel the money to the people who need it, and they don't want it to be a free-for-all. So it's a lot of partnering with organizations right now and still trying to figure things out. But we also need to support each other, continue to support each other. There is the whole chant of support Black business. I want to see that continue. In my family right now, a lot of times when you're asking for a recommendation, the first question in our group chat is, are they Black? That is like the first question that's being asked in our group chat. Like, when I'm asking you for a recommendation, I need you to know what my expectations are. But we need to start being deliberate with some of our decisions. And it's fine. It's okay to be that way. It is okay to do so. I know my business supports all entrepreneurs, but I'm telling you that I am pulling to try to highlight Black entrepreneurs because they're people who look like me. And I might not have someone trying to highlight me all the time, but we know that we've been fortunate enough to have had organizations who believe in us and they want to highlight us. Like, our big example is one of our sponsors today, BDC. I've had an ongoing relationship with BDC for years. So before all this, before the Black Lives Matter movement, and that means something to me because BDC is not supporting me now because of the Black Lives Matter movement. They've been supportive before. So, try to find organizations that will support you because they're out there.
Absolutely. Novelette, did you want to weigh in on that?
Same comments, echoing Dwania and AJ. I think we need to understand that, many Black entrepreneurs, we don't have that generational lineage of the financial hand-me-downs that others have had. And I think for many of us, we're starting that for our kids, our nephews, nieces, for our family. And just knowing that, something that we start can last for a long time. So we just need to kind of push through. And again, financial support obviously is extremely important in doing so.
Absolutely.
Just add one more point.
Sure.
I think mentorship, events like this event, organizations like Canadian Small Business Women. I mean, we need to think about ways of connecting and supporting each other, especially if we're coming from marginalized communities, right? I think about how important it is for organizations like Cable, that is an association for Black lawyers, in terms of connecting other lawyers that have experience to help them get ahead. It's vitally important. So I think that's the other component of it, right? Like, the one part is actually acknowledging that there's barriers in terms of us getting forward in terms of financing. But the other issue too is because of historic inequities, we need to find ways to better connect so that those of us who kind of got ahead, we can be mentors to those who are coming up too.
Thank you for those comments, for sure. And I mean, as a historian, I want to say that while the era of segregation here in Canada, yes, there was segregation here in Canada, while it was very difficult and challenging in some ways, certainly it propelled or compelled the Black communities of this land to support one another's businesses and professionals and tradespeople. And we do have to maintain that mindset of being willing to offer our own support as consumers and as clients and customers and shoppers and investors, and realize that we may have to go a little bit out of our way. We may have to pay slightly more than we do at the discount store or whatever, but that practice of circulating Black dollars in our own community pays such dividends for the community as a whole. So it's definitely a mindset to adopt and sustain and practice, reflect on it, meditate on it, keep voting with your feet, support Black businesses and entrepreneurs to whatever extent you can. So we've touched a little bit on Black Lives Matter and some of the issues that have come up. I must ask about the events last year that sparked so much outrage and pain, but also momentum towards long overdue conversations with the wider public. Those tragic events around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and Regis Korshinsky-Paquette, too many others. There are concerns that the resulting focus on anti-Black racism was only as long as the news cycle. Do you foresee that these events will have any lasting impact on the discussion about race, racism, diversity, and inclusion in Canada? What are your thoughts?
I think there's been a start. I think there's been acknowledgement, there's been a start, but it's incumbent on all of ourselves, on our allies, to keep that momentum going. We can't let it stop, because that happens regularly. I'm a lawyer. I work in the criminal justice world. I work in the mental health and healthcare world. And I can say, when we talk about George Floyd, that's not just an American issue. You talked about Regis. This happens a lot in Canada, right? Where you have tragic death of Black people, especially when there's an intersection of mental health, and there's often an impunity. There's no, consequence. We need to keep, the pedal to the metal and keep on pushing. One of the things I push for from a policy standpoint is more race-based data collection. That's a big issue. It's something that we looked at when I worked at Legal Aid Ontario. We don't do enough of it. We do hardly any of it. We know anecdotally there's big issues for Black and racialized and Indigenous people in terms of the criminal justice system, but we don't have enough numbers to really drive the policy. So it's very important that we push policymakers, politicians, these different institutions to start including and having some strategy around race-based data collection. The other point I'd like to make is that in healthcare, this is a big issue too. We can't just look at it just as from a criminal justice lens. I think COVID and the pandemic has really highlighted the inequities in this country in terms of healthcare, right? Why is it that in Toronto, we represent maybe 9% of the population, but I think in summer, we were over 20% of COVID positive cases, right? When I think about health outcomes for Black women who are new or expected mothers, there's certain metrics that that have done studies that showed that they have worse outcomes. There's issues if this country has universal health care and we have different health outcomes that we need to address. And again, I think the way we can start to address it is through race-based data collection in these different sectors, whether it's healthcare or the justice system. And I think that's just another tool or way that we can then justify, continued changes in terms of policy. I worked in policy. I think generally people are well intended. They have good intentions, the people in power. But if you don't have numbers or you don't have, the data to actually drive the change, it's very difficult to justify these programming. It's very difficult, to even Dwania's point, in terms of even ensuring, like, let's say programs like supporting Black businesses are done. It kind of gets bottlenecked because we're not sure how to actually deliver this. And I think a part of that impasse is lack of data and understanding what's happening on the ground. So data collection and keeping things going, I think, is very important to that.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I know for me personally, I felt like it was quote unquote the perfect storm when George Floyd's murder happened, because it forced everyone to stop and listen. And even now with the pandemic still going on, it's still forcing us to act, because a lot of us can't really do all the fun things that we normally do. So we have to now stand for all the serious things. And personally, I feel like, I've always felt like I could say whatever I wanted, because like Novelette, I have a great family and they won't make me suffer. So whether I'm in corporate or not, I will tell you, I don't tolerate disrespect. So if it means I'm fired, I won't suffer, I'll be fine. So, but now I feel that more people feel empowered to speak up, because all these organizations, a lot of them care about is bad press, and they do not want bad press. Because we know that, we need to hold their feet to the fire. We need to demand better. All those people who had those black squares last year, I want to see what they're doing this year and the year after and the year after. And we need to all feel empowered to speak our piece, because really, what are they going to do? They are afraid of the backlash. They see the power in our dollars. They know that they can't afford to really anger us. So we're going to keep fighting. And the expectation is generations to come. This is our civil war. And we're okay with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those comments. I mean, it's true that so many non-Black Indigenous people of color in Canada are often bewildered or shocked by the revelation that racism is something that's happening here. They have a tendency to think of it as something elsewhere or in that other country. And we do have to keep telling the stories and shining a light on that. I would say that what we don't measure doesn't get fixed and doesn't get addressed. So reliance on anecdotal evidence, unfortunately, does not sway anyone in a meaningful way. So we do need to engage in that race-based data collection more now than ever. And I'm hopeful that that will start to take place more frequently. It does seem that in Ontario, where I think we all are, at least the government is looking for more data collection on a race-based basis in the K-12 school system, for example. And that's exciting, because those are some inequities that have been long awaiting resolution, and hopefully that will get us further towards actually resolving them. So while Black Canadians are very diverse, we have just a few minutes remaining. There are some issues on which we can all benefit from working together. What are your thoughts about the state of unity and collaboration across Black Canadian communities today, in light of everything we've been talking about?
From my perspective, working in law and creating a practice during this is a great time for lawyers, I think a lot of different businesses, to leverage the fact that you don't need a lot of overhead to start a business, right? And I think, where I get a lot of support now is the connections that I have with people in my community, with allies in the virtual space, like what we're doing right now, right? Like this is very easy entry in terms of like barriers. There's not a lot to it. As long as you have internet connection, we can connect in a meaningful way. We don't need to have to rent a big space and a lot of overhead. I mean, that has helped me in terms of launching my practice. And then also connecting with other people, through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. I can connect with mentors, with prospective clients very easily. So I think right now is a great moment to, leverage technology to connect with others in our community and to kind of get that support. It's a lot easier now, right? And we need to continue to do that. This is a great time, I think, for us to kind of move forward.
Excellent. Well, we've come to the end of our time. Can you believe it? It went really, really quickly, like very, very quickly. You are all very, very enlightening, and I'm so grateful to have participated in this discussion with you. Thank you, Dwania Peele, Novelette E. Gordon, and AJ Grant Nicholson, and thanks to all of you for joining us today, and we hope that you gained something from this discussion. Happy Black History Month.
Thank you, guys.